Deep in the lawless reaches of space, Orus Gate hung between two dying stars like a fortress abandoned by time. The station's weathered hull bore the scars of centuries, illuminated only by the crimson glow of fading suns that cast long shadows across its endless docking rings. Freighters, smugglers, mercenaries, diplomats, and warships from dozens of civilizations arrived every hour, but almost none lingered. Orus Gate was not a place where anyone came to rest. It was where fortunes changed hands, dangerous bargains were struck, and secrets worth entire star systems were bought and sold. Survival, not comfort, was the station's only currency. Standing before a towering observation window, Jonah Reed watched the stars drift slowly across the darkness. The glass reflected a stranger back at him, a man with tired eyes, a weathered face, and the unmistakable look of someone who had survived too many battles and trusted too few people. Somewhere beyond that endless void, another job was waiting. On Orus Gate, trouble always found you before you found it, and a human pressure suit that had seen too many repairs. He looked smaller than the others around him. Humans usually did. In this part of the galaxy, humans were known as workers, scavengers, and survivors. Never leaders, never important. Jonah did not mind that reputation. It kept expectations low, and low expectations kept people alive. He adjusted the clasp of his helmet and checked the oxygen seal out of habit. He had learned long ago that machines failed often, and help rarely came in time. Depending on himself was safer. Behind him, soft footsteps echoed across the metal floor. Jonah turned slightly, already alert. She stood a few steps away, half hidden by shadow. Her skin shimmered faintly, shifting colors like light on water. Her eyes were large and calm, but something behind them moved. Fear, urgency, or both. She was Vi. The Vithi were known for silence. They avoided attention, avoided conflict, avoided humans. Seeing one approach him directly was unusual. Jonah did not speak first. The station noise faded as she stepped closer. Her voice, when it came, was low and careful, as if the words themselves were dangerous. "Want to see more?" she whispered. "Unclasp it." Jonah froze. His hand moved instinctively toward his sidearm, then stopped. She was not looking at his weapon. Her eyes were fixed on the locking seal of his helmet. The request made no sense. Removing a helmet in a public station was risky. Air mixtures varied. Diseases spread fast. Trusting alien environments had killed many humans before. Jonah studied her face. She was nervous but not threatening. Whatever she wanted, it was not violence. "What happens if I do?" Jonah asked. Her eyes flickered with something close to relief. "Then I will know you are not hiding," she said. "And I can tell you the truth." Truth was a dangerous word. Jonah looked around. No guards nearby, no drones watching closely. Still, his instincts warned him. This station had a long memory of betrayals. He exhaled slowly. Humans survived not because they were fearless, but because they chose their risks carefully. Jonah reached up and released the clasp. The helmet seal broke with a soft hiss. Cool station air brushed his face. He took a steady breath and waited for pain or alarms. Nothing happened. The Vithi girl watched closely, her posture relaxing just a little, her shoulders lowered as if a heavy weight had shifted. "You did it," she said quietly. Jonah met her eyes. "You asked." She stepped closer now, close enough that Jonah could see the fine glowing patterns along her neck. Vithi markings were private. Showing them was not done lightly. "My name is Sa," she said, "and I should not be speaking to you." Jonah nodded. "That makes two of us." Her lips curved slightly, almost a smile. "They will not listen to me," Sa continued. "Not my people, not the council, not anyone who matters." Jonah felt a familiar tightening in his chest. He had heard those words before, from miners, refugees, forgotten worlds. "Why come to me?" he asked. Sailor looked at his open face, uncovered and vulnerable. "Because humans," she said, "are the only ones who remove their armor, even when the universe tells them not to." Jonah did not reply, but something inside him shifted. Outside the window, The stars continued their slow, endless movement. And somewhere between those stars, a choice had just been made, one that would not stay small for long. The corridors of Orus Gate were narrow, filled with hums and flickers of old machinery. Jonah followed Sailor cautiously, every step echoing like a warning. The station's lights reflected off her skin, making her markings glow softly in patterns that humans could never truly understand. She moved silently, as if the shadows themselves were helping her, but Jonah noticed every small twitch, every pause, every glance behind them. "Where are we going?" he asked, careful not to sound fearful. Humans had learned that fear was noticed before actions were. "To a place no one watches," Sailor whispered. Her voice had the gentleness of wind over calm water, yet carried urgency that made Jonah tense. "I need to show you something important, but you cannot tell anyone yet." Jonah glanced around. The station seemed ordinary, yet he sensed tension pressing through the walls. He had been in trade hubs before, but none felt this heavy, as if the air itself held secrets. "Why me?" he asked again, unable to hide curiosity and suspicion. "Because humans act differently," she replied. "You see truth when others hide from it. You take risks when everyone else folds." Her eyes locked with his. "And you keep promises even when it is dangerous." Jonah swallowed. That was a compliment he rarely heard, especially from an alien species. He had spent years being underestimated, laughed at, ignored, and now this girl, Avia, trusted him enough to risk exposure. They reached a side tunnel hidden behind maintenance panels. Sailor pressed a hand against a hidden switch, and a small door slid open, revealing a dim room lined with glowing consoles. Holographic star maps floated mid-air, showing clusters of worlds, each blinking like a heartbeat. Jonah's eyes widened. "This," he began. "This is a map of the outer sectors." "Why, show me this." Sailor's glowing markings pulsed faster. "Not just a map. Look closer." She pointed at one star cluster, where dots dimmed and disappeared entirely. "Those are Vithi colonies. The Council has been closing them off slowly. Resources rooted, communications cut. They plan to erase us quietly. The universe will not notice, and most species will not care." Jonah felt his chest tight. The stories he had heard in whispers, lost worlds, abandoned colonies were not myths. They were true, and now they were staring him in the face. "Why haven't they attacked openly?" Jonah asked, trying to make sense of the silence. "Because no one would stop them," Sa said softly. "They call it law, civilization, but it is murder by numbers. And my people, we are not allowed to fight back." Jonah clenched his fists. Humans had faced oppression before. Governments tried and often failed, but humans had a stubbornness that refused to bow. That same stubbornness had kept him alive on countless missions. Sailor's gaze softened as she stepped closer. "I cannot show this to anyone else. They would kill me first." Her voice trembled. "But you have a chance to help." Jonah looked at her, at the fragile glow of her markings, at the fear in her eyes, masked by determination. This was not a game. This was survival, and trust was the only weapon they had. "I will help," he said finally, "but we have to be smart. Quick, quiet, and careful. One wrong step, and they'll erase both of us." Sailor nodded, relief shining through her calm exterior. For the first time, she allowed herself a small smile. It was a strange human-like gesture, but it made Jonah's chest tighten in an unfamiliar way. "Good," she whispered. "I need you to carry this," and handed him a small crystal the size of his palm. It glowed faintly, filled with encrypted data. "It has proof. Star routes, council, communications, everything. If anyone intercepts it," her voice broke slightly, "we are finished." Jonah took the crystal, feeling its weight. It was heavier than it looked, not because of its size but because of the responsibility it carried. The fate of an entire species rested in his hands. "Don't worry," he said softly. "I've survived worse." "You may survive," Sa said, her voice barely audible. "But can the world survive what you're about to do?" Jonah looked out a small viewport. The stars stretched endlessly. Somewhere out there, countless beings slept, unaware that the universe was balancing on a human decision. And in that moment, Jonah realized survival wasn't just about staying alive. It was about choosing who would live and who would be forgot. The maintenance tunnels of Horus Gates smelled faintly of oil and recycled air. Jonah's boots echoed softly on the metal floor as he followed Sailor deeper into the station. Every step felt heavier than the last. The crystal in his hand pulsed faintly, as if reminding him of the responsibility it carried. He had been through danger before, but nothing like this. Sa moved ahead with the grace of someone used to silence. Her bioluminescent markings glowed brighter now, reacting to the tension around them. Jonah studied her carefully. She was small, almost fragile, yet her presence filled the corridor with a strange authority. She did not speak much, but every glance, every subtle movement carried meaning. "Why me?" Jonah asked again, though he already understood the answer. Humans were unpredictable, and their willingness to act often outshone reason. "Why not someone from your own people?" Sailor's shoulders tensed. "No one else would risk it. My people are trained to obey, to hide, to vanish quietly. Only someone outside our rules can act freely. Only you." Jonah tightened his grip on the crystal. It felt like holding the heartbeat of an entire civilization. His mind raced. One wrong step, one slip of trust, and it would all be lost. He thought of the countless times humans had survived because they refused to accept the rules of others. Maybe that stubbornness was why he had been chosen. The tunnel opened into a large abandoned docking bay. The bay was dimly lit, shadows stretching across stacked cargo crates. Jonah's eyes adjusted quickly. He noticed the faint hum of security systems, some active, some offline. The perfect place for secrets to live or die. Sailor stopped and faced him, her gaze steady. "The Council's plan is already in motion," she said. "Colonies disappearing, resources cut off. They have allies among the major stations. Any resistance is crushed quietly without witnesses. If we do not act, no one will remember my people exist in a decade." Jonah swallowed. His mind flashed to home, to the stories he had heard of worlds abandoned and lives erased because no one dared to speak. The weight pressed down on him like gravity he could not escape. "And what exactly do you expect me to do?" he asked, keeping his voice low. "You will carry this," she said, gesturing to the crystal in his hand. "To those who can spread the truth. You will not fight alone. You will need allies, humans, aliens, anyone willing to listen. But the first step," she paused, her markings pulsing rapidly. "The first step is risk. Only risk will break their silence." Jonah's chest tightened. He was not used to carrying lives in his hands. Yet he felt the fire of determination rise. Humans were not the strongest, he reminded himself, but they were stubborn. They were courageous in ways others could not understand, and sometimes that was enough. A sudden noise echoed through the docking bay, a metallic clang followed by a distant hiss. Jonah and Sailor froze. Shadows moved along the far wall. Drones, security patrols. Someone had noticed their movements. "They are faster than I thought," Sailor whispered. Her voice was calm, but Jonah could hear the worry beneath it. "We must move." Jonah nodded. The corridors now seemed narrower, every shadow a threat. His heart pounded, not just from fear, but from the awareness that the survival of a people rested on his choices. As they ducked behind a stack of crates, Sailor leaned closer. "Do you understand now?" she asked. "This is not about battle. This is about truth, about courage, about being seen when everyone expects you to hide." Jonah looked at her glowing eyes. He felt a strange connection, one built not on words or promises, but on the silent acknowledgement of shared danger. In that moment he realized something profound. To survive, sometimes the bravest act was simply to stand and be visible. The patrol drones approached, their lights scanning, their sensors alive. Jonah inhaled slowly. He had a choice: run, hide, or step forward, and for the first time in a long time, he felt ready. Because sometimes being human meant carrying more than your own life. Sometimes it meant carrying the lives of many, even when the universe expected you to fail. Jonah tightened his grip on the crystal, met Sailor's determined gaze, and stepped out from behind the crates. The chase had begun, but so had something else. A fight for survival that was more than physical. It was a fight for truth, for trust, and for hope. The lights in the docking bay flickered as the patrol drones moved closer, their mechanical limbs clanking against the metal floor. Jonah pressed himself against the shadowed crates, heart pounding like a drum. The crystal in his hand felt impossibly heavy, carrying the future of a silent people. Sailor crouched beside him, glowing markings pulsing faster. "We have to move," she whispered, her voice steady. "Despite the tension, every second we wait, they get closer." Jonah nodded, taking a deep breath. Humans survived by choosing when to act, not by panicking. He had learned that in countless dangerous corners of the galaxy. He had learned it in mines on forgotten moons, in trading stations under attack, and in spacewalks where a single mistake meant death. He could survive this too. But this time, survival wasn't just about him. They darted from the crates into a narrow maintenance corridor, walls low and cramped. The patrol lights swept past the docking bay entrance, missing them by inches. Jonah felt Sailor's hand brush against his arm, and instinctive reassurance, not contact. He focused on her presence. She was more than fragile. She was determined. Every movement, every careful step told him that. "You understand what's at stake?" Sa asked quietly. "If the Council finds this crystal with anyone else, my people are finished. My world may disappear before the next cycle." Jonah swallowed hard. "I understand," he said, "and I'm not letting that happen." They reached an old service elevator, rusted and trembling with age. Sailor pressed a sequence on the panel, and it groaned to life. As they stepped inside, Jonah glanced back. Shadows moved at the far end of the corridor. Figures humanoid yet alien. Patrols designed to intimidate, to enforce silence. The elevator jolted upward slowly. Jonah's chest tightened. Every second felt stretched like the gap between two heartbeats. He watched Sailor as she adjusted her stance, markings glowing faintly. She did not speak, but her determination radiated. He drew strength from it. At the top, the elevator doors opened into a small observation deck overlooking the outer sectors. Stars stretched endlessly, distant suns burning bright. Jonah stepped forward, letting the vastness remind him why he fought. The universe was cold, indifferent, but there was beauty worth saving. Suddenly, alarms blared, a sharp, high-pitched warning that sent shivers down their spines. Drones had breached another level. Jonah grabbed the crystal tightly, feeling the weight of trust pressing against his palm. Sailor's eyes widened slightly, but she did not panic. She led him to a side hatch, barely large enough for both of them to squeeze through. "Through here," she said. "It's risky, but faster." They emerged into a narrow ventilation shaft. The hum of the station seemed distant now, muffled by the metal tunnels. Jonah crawled ahead carefully, pausing whenever the vibrations of distant patrols approached. Sa followed closely, her glowing markings illuminating the shaft faintly. "This crystal," she whispered, "is more than data. It is proof, evidence that the Council cannot hide. If it reaches the right hands, others will act. My people may survive because of you." Jonah's heart clenched. The weight of responsibility was almost unbearable. Humans rarely carried such stakes, yet he felt an odd clarity. Courage was an absence of fear. It was moving forward despite it. A sudden metallic scrape above them made Jonah freeze. A drone had detected their movement. Its sensors swept across the vent, whirring and clicking. Jonah held his breath. Sailor pressed herself against the wall, tiny and tense. "Wait," she whispered. The drone paused, then passed. Jonah exhaled slowly. "Close call," he muttered. Sailor nodded, but her eyes did not leave the vent opening. Every step, every breath, was now measured precise. They moved on, inch by inch, the crystal, a beacon of hope and danger in Jonah's hands. Each turn, each shadow, carried the risk of discovery, and yet they pressed forward, driven not by weapons or strength, but by a shared belief that some lives mattered too much to be forgotten. For Jonah, that was the first real test, not fighting drones or escaping danger, but carrying the weight of a world he had never seen, trusting a being he barely knew, and standing firm when the universe expected him to falter. At last, the shaft opened onto a small storage deck, far from patrol routes. Jonah exhaled, heart still racing. Sailor turned to him, a faint smile breaking her composed mask. "You survived the first step," she said softly. "The next will be harder." Jonah glanced at the stars again, feeling the truth settle deep inside him. Survival was not enough. To save them, he would have to risk everything. And for the first time, he welcomed that risk. The storage deck was quiet, but Jonah's heart beat loudly in the stillness. He and Sailor crouched behind a stack of crates, the crystal glowing faintly in his palm. Every shadow seemed alive, every hum of machinery like a warning. The Council's drones were still out there searching, but for the moment, they were alone. "Now what?" Jonah whispered, keeping his voice low. "We have the crystal, but what can we do from here?" Sailor's glowing eyes met his. "We speak, not quietly, not in whispers, but loudly. The universe will hear, and humans know how to spread a message." Jonah nodded, understanding dawning. Humans were loud when they had to be. Stories spread fast. Data moved faster, and voices carried farther than bullets. He could use his species' stubbornness to fight something that brute force could not. "Then we make them listen," he said, determination sharpening his tone. Sailor handed him a small transmitter, sleek and unassuming. "This will broadcast to every station connected to the sector." She said, "It cannot be traced back to you or me if we do it right, but the message must be simple, clear. Truth does not need embellishment." Jonah took a deep breath. The crystal pulsed in response, almost as if aware of the magnitude of the moment. He adjusted the transmitter, feeling a tremor of fear mixed with purpose. Humans were rarely this exposed, rarely this accountable, but the truth demanded courage, and courage was all he had. The first broadcast was tentative. Jonah's voice trembled as he spoke, recounting the names of the lost colonies, the silenced worlds, and the cold calculations of a council that called eraser law. He did not embellish. He did not shout. He only spoke as a human who had witnessed injustice and refused to remain silent. Sa watched quietly. Her markings glowed brighter with every word, reflecting hope and fear alike. She did not interrupt. She did not guide. She only allowed the truth to flow through Jonah. By the third repetition, the message had reached beyond Orus Gate. Pilots on trade routes heard it first, their communications relaying the broadcast farther and farther. Merchants, engineers, even other via thy colonies long forgotten, began to listen. The silence that had existed for cycles started to crack. Jonah's voice grew stronger. He added details of council decisions, data extracted from the crystal, evidence that no one could ignore. He told the story of the Verite, not as victims, but as a proud people whose lives mattered. He emphasized that hiding and submission had allowed injustice to spread too far. Hours passed like minutes. Jonah's throat was dry, his body tense, but he refused to stop. Every time he faltered, he felt Sailor's presence beside him, her steady glow reminding him why he could not give up. Finally, the last transmission ended. Silence returned, but it was different now. It was not the suffocating quiet of a universe that ignored suffering. It was expectant, waiting. The first ripples of change were spreading, and Jonah could feel it. Sailor's eyes softened. "You did it," she said quietly. "You made them here." Jonah shook his head. "Not me. Humans helped. And you? You trusted me." Her lips curved slightly, almost a smile. "Trust is dangerous," she admitted, "but sometimes it is the only thing that saves worlds." Jonah exhaled slowly, feeling the weight of the crystal lesson in his hand. The station was still dangerous. Patrols would search. The council would retaliate. But for the first time, he sensed hope, not just for the Varthai, but for the idea that courage and honesty could ripple farther than fear and rules. Outside the viewport, distant stars shimmered, silent witnesses to the choice they had made. Jonah pressed the crystal close to his chest. It was more than data now. It was life. It was memory. It was proof that even a human could change the universe one voice at a time. And in that moment, Jonah understood something fundamental. Survival was not enough. To matter, one had to speak, to act, and to trust. Even when the universe demanded silence, he looked at Sailor. Her glow reflected pride, relief, and the faintest trace of hope. Together, they had broken a silence that no law, no machine, no council had been able to maintain, and in the echo of that truth, Jonah felt the stirrings of something larger than fear, larger than danger, a human courage that refused to vanish, even in the coldest reaches of space. The stars outside Orus Gate felt colder now. Jonah and Sailor stood in a dim corner of the storage deck, their eyes on the viewport as distant patrol ships shifted in response to the broadcast. The crystal in Jonah's hand pulsed softly, like a heartbeat syncing with his own. They had made the universe listen, but now they were exposed. Every shadow, every corridor could hold danger. Sailor's glowing markings flickered nervously. "They know," she said softly. "The council will respond soon. Their reach is long, and their patience is short." Jonah nodded, feeling a chill creep into his chest. Humans were used to pressure, to tight corners, to threats. But this was different. The stakes were no longer personal. They were universal. One mistake could erase not only Sailor's people, but the fragile hope they had just sparked. "We need a plan," Jonah said, voice steady, though his heart raced. "Hiding won't help. Waiting won't help. We have to move where they can't reach us, at least until the broadcast spreads farther." Sailor hesitated. "There is one place, a ship hidden beyond the station, old and overlooked. It can carry us beyond patrol routes." But she looked down, her markings dimming. "It is risky. We have no guarantee it will survive the jump, and if we are intercepted..." Jonah placed a firm hand on her shoulder. "We have no other choice." He paused, letting the weight of the moment settle. "I've survived worse, and we've done something no one thought possible. We can't stop now." They moved cautiously through the storage deck, slipping past flickering lights and shadowed corners. Jonah's mind raced, thinking of the consequences of failure. Every human instinct sharpened. Watch the sounds, anticipate movements, trust only what is certain. Yet nothing felt certain except Sailor's presence beside him. They reached the hidden ship tucked behind a cluster of cargo containers. Rust streaked along its hull, but its engines were intact. Jonah ran his hands over the controls, feeling the history embedded in the old metal. He was no pilot by trade, yet humans had learned to adapt in the worst conditions, and now that adaptability was their only hope. Sailor climbed aboard first, her gaze steady on Jonah. "Do you trust me?" she asked. Jonah hesitated. Trust was complicated between humans and between species and worlds, but he nodded. "I do. And you trust me too, or you wouldn't have shared the crystal." Her markings pulsed, a faint light that seemed almost relieved. "Then we go," she said. The engines hummed to life, trembling under Jonah's hands. Outside, patrol ships were already shifting, alerted by the broadcast. Jonah took a deep breath and activated the jump sequence. The station lights stretched and twisted, stars streaked into lines, and for a moment, Jonah felt the familiar thrill of human courage. Risk embraced rather than avoided. The jump was rough, metal groaned, and the air inside the cabin shivered with acceleration. Jonah gritted his teeth. Every second felt like an eternity. Sailor's hands were steady, gripping the console beside him, her glow lighting the cramped cabin with a calm determination, and then silence. They emerged on the other side of the sector, far beyond the reach of immediate patrols. Jonah exhaled, relief washing over him in a wave strong enough to shake his exhaustion. The crystal lay safe, their first broadcast complete, their first escape successful. Sailor let out a breath she hadn't realized she'd been holding. "You did it," she said quietly, almost to herself. "You carried more than data, Jonah. You carried hope." Jonah smiled faintly, tired but alive. "We did it together," he said. "Humans survive by adapting, by acting, by trusting when it matters most. And sometimes that's enough to change the universe." The stars stretched endlessly outside their viewport, indifferent yet beautiful. Jonah understood the truth now. Courage was not the absence of fear. It was choosing to act, to carry the weight of more than your own life, even when the outcome was uncertain. Sailor's markings pulsed softly, glowing like a beacon of fragile hope. "The Council will not give up," she said. "The next challenge will be harder, but now we have a chance to make a difference." Jonah's hand brushed against the crystal. "Then we take it," he said firmly. "Step by step, world by world, and we make sure no one is erased again." For the first time in cycles, the Via Thy girl smiled fully, her glow lighting the cabin with quiet warmth. Jonah felt the truth of her words, not just about survival, but about purpose. They were not merely running from danger. They were running towards something far greater, the chance to change history. And for Jonah, that was a weight worth carrying. The stars outside the small ship stretched like silver threads across the black canvas of space. Jonah leaned against the viewport, the crystal safe in his hand, glowing softly with the evidence of lives that might have been erased forever. Sailor sat beside him, her glowing markings dimmed to a calm, steady pulse. For the first time since the broadcast, they allowed themselves a quiet moment. "They will respond," Sailor said softly, her voice thoughtful. "The Council will try to suppress this. There will be investigations, threats, perhaps attacks. We cannot hide forever." Jonah nodded. Humans never hid when it mattered. Silence was comfortable, yes, but courage had always been louder than fear. "Then we continue," he said, "step by step, word by word. We will make sure the truth reaches those who care. The Council can't erase what the universe now knows." Sailor's eyes reflected the distant stars. "You risked everything," she whispered. "You risked your life for people you've never met." Jonah smiled faintly, exhaustion and relief mingling. Humans survive by connecting, by acting, by trusting each other. Sometimes the universe gives us a chance to make those actions matter beyond ourselves. He paused. And sometimes it chooses the right moment, even if we don't see it coming. For hours they navigated through uncharted routes, avoiding patrols and seeking the safest path. Jonah could feel the subtle shift in the sector. Reports of the broadcast were spreading faster than the Council anticipated. Traders, pilots, and independent stations were picking up the message. It was like a spark, igniting distant fires. "This is just the beginning," SA said. "If the message spreads, if other species understand, perhaps we can prevent the erasure of more colonies. Perhaps we can change the future." Jonah watched her closely. Her expression was calm, yet beneath it, he sensed hope, fragile as glass. But he also sensed determination, the kind that refused to break even when the universe pressed down. "Then we'll protect that hope," he said firmly. Together, the ship passed a quiet, deserted system, stars reflecting off the metallic hull. Jonah held the crystal close. It was more than proof now. It was a symbol of defiance, of courage, of a choice that mattered. He realized something deeply human. Survival alone was not enough. To leave a mark, to change something that seemed impossible, required risk, trust, and the willingness to act when all eyes expected silence. Sailor turned to him, her glowing markings shimmering faintly in soft blues and greens. "You carried more than evidence," she said. "You carried belief. Belief that someone would care enough to act." Jonah looked out at the stars. "Humans survive by refusing to vanish," he said. "Not because we're the strongest, not because we are cleverest, but because we choose to be seen, even when the universe tells us not to." A distant pulse of light from a nearby station caught his eye. Reports of their broadcast were reaching farther than they imagined. Jonah smiled, a rare and quiet relief warming his chest. The Council could try to suppress, to intimidate, but one truth once shared could never be taken back. Sailor leaned against the console, her soft glow brightening slightly. "Do you think the others will understand?" she asked. Jonah's gaze was steady. "They will. Humans will make sure they do, and they will help, because now there is no hiding from what matters." The crystal pulsed once more, warm in Jonah's hands. It was the heartbeat of a civilization saved by courage, by trust, and by a human willing to act when silence was easier. Jonah felt the weight not as fear, but as purpose, a purpose that transcended species, borders, and fear itself. As they drifted into the uncharted sector, Jonah realized that life would always be dangerous. The council would retaliate, other obstacles would appear, but hope had taken root, and hope, once alive, could never be extinguished by fear alone. Sailors' markings glimmered like quiet stars, a mirror of Jonah's own determination. Together, they had started something that could not be undone. A human had dared to trust, to act, and to speak, and in doing so had changed the course of a people's future. Jonah exhaled slowly, a smile tugging at the corners of his lips. For the first time in cycles, the galaxy felt less indifferent. Somewhere out there, lives would be saved, histories preserved, and courage remembered. And in that moment, Jonah understood what it truly meant to be human, to stand unarmed in the dark, to carry the weight of hope, and to shine when the universe expected him to hide. They were not the strongest, they were not the fastest, but they were seen, and that Jonah realized was enough to change everything.